great to be out here in the Berkshires. I want to thank Mayor Tyre for having us here today. I also want to thank Mayor Bernard, Representative Pignatelli, Representative Farley-Bouvier, Representative Barrett for being here. And I want to thank Senator Hines and Representative Mark for their partnership on this issue. They have been working actively on this issue. We've been talking to Senator Hines on an ongoing basis. And of course, I want to thank Congressman Richie Neal. He is focused like a laser on this issue. We have met over and over in his office on this issue to try to find a way to resolve it. And I also, of course, want to thank my partner in the Senate, Senator Warren. She and I have introduced the legislation jointly in the Senate as Congressman Neal has introduced it into the House of Representatives. Across the Commonwealth, the people of Massachusetts enjoy and rely on local broadcast television every single day. It's how we follow our favorite sports teams. It's how we stay informed about our local government. And it's how we know whether to bring an umbrella to work or send the kids off to school with mittens. Unfortunately, the residents of Berkshire County have lost access to vital local broadcast television, and that is unacceptable. It makes absolutely no sense that the region's cable provider, Charter, dropped WWLP, Channel 22, a Springfield NBC affiliate, from its channels lineup. Berkshire families have been stripped of local television program they enjoy and rely on before their morning commutes and when they come home in the evening. But Charter didn't just stop there. In June of this year, Charter also pulled WCVB Channel 5, a Boston ABC station, off the air. Why did Charter do this? Because the cable company isn't willing to spend a nickel to maintain its customers' historical access to these local stations. But customers are still paying plenty of nickels as cable bills go up and up and up. In the Berkshires, we want to watch Red Sox home runs at Fenway, not Yankee strikeouts in the Bronx. But restoring these channels isn't just about sports and entertainment. This is a fundamental question of civic engagement. Now more than ever, residents need and want to be informed about their communities and the Commonwealth. Berkshire residents deserve to know the latest news from the Massachusetts State House. They deserve to know what the legislature is doing to protect their health care. They want to know how their elected officials are working to create jobs and economic growth. But since the Berkshires is designated as part of the Albany media market, the broadcast stations they receive focus on New York, sports, news, politics, and not Massachusetts. That is why this week I introduced legislation that will force Charter Communications to come to the table and to find a solution that brings WWLP and WCVB back on the air. That is what the bill that Richie Neal and I have introduced. It is meant to be a joint effort in order to accomplish that goal. Let me tell you what our bill will do. One, force Charter to engage in good faith negotiations with the stations to bring WWLP and WCVB back on the air. Preserve Berkshire County residents' access to Albany, New York stations that provide relevant weather updates and important emergency information. Under our legislation, Charter can no longer shrug its shoulders and maintain the status quo. The bill tells Charter you can no longer sit on the sideline and leave Berkshire County viewers hanging. Federal Communications Commissioner Chairman Ajit Pai was in the Berkshires last month, and committed to working with us to get the broadcasting that the region is demanding. The FCC should join with us in this fight to restore service to Berkshire customers. It is time for action. It is time for a solution. So I thank Senator Warren for joining with me as co-sponsor of the legislation in the Senate. And of course, Richie Neal is the champion for the Berkshires in the United States Congress, and he, along with Senator Warren and I, are going to fight every single day to move forward to ensure that Charter comes to the table to resolve this issue. This legislation is an important step. The Berkshires are in Massachusetts, and its residents deserve programming that respects that. I will continue to look for solutions until this problem is solved, and that Massachusetts stations are back on the air in the Berkshires. So let me now recognize Mayor Tyre. Thank you for having all of us here today.
Thank you so much, Senator Markey. I am so honored to have you here in the city of Pittsfield for this important announcement today. We're also very grateful to Representative Neal for his advocacy and for Senator Warren for joining you. Your unwavering support of your constituents here in Pittsfield and the Berkshires is something we are exceedingly grateful for. When Senator Markey and I spoke several months ago, I represented to him to the best of my ability the many, many reasons why the citizens of Pittsfield are frustrated, actually downright angry, with what we know as Spectrum and what the senator has referred to as Charter, for their total disregard of their customers. So we've held a public hearing. We asked them to come before the City Council and present their annual report. But chief among my complaints was the removal of Springfield and Boston news programming from Pittsfield and the Berkshires. So we Pittsfielders love our next door neighbor, New York. We love them, but we are citizens of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And we deserve to know what's happening in our state capital and what's happening in cities just like Pittsfield across this Commonwealth. So I and the members of the City Council, some of whom are here today, President Markey, Councilor Mazzu, Councilor Moon, have been working diligently to hold Spectrum accountable to the contract that they have with us, with the City of Pittsfield. They've responded, but in my opinion, it was first delayed, and quite frankly, I dispute some of the data that's in their report. And this further erodes my trust in this company that makes a lot of money off of the people of Pittsfield. Mayor Bernard and I have talked at length with the Massachusetts Department of Telecommunications to express our serious concerns. Pittsfield and North Adams local cable providers have been at the table with us to fight for your rights as viewers. So for all of these reasons, I am extremely grateful to the Senator and to Senator Warren and to Representative Neal for their taking up our cause. They are standing with us. Now we've got to stand with them and help advocate for the passage of this legislation that Senator Markey has proposed and announced to us today. Thank you, Senator, very much.
Much appreciated. Thank you, Madam Mayor. We're in this fight, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Senator, I'd like to introduce Representative Bouvier, who will make some remarks.
Thank you so much, Senator. Senator, we appreciate you coming here to the Berkshires. You have proven to be a senator that doesn't just talk the talk, but walks the walk. And you walked right here in the Berkshires, didn't you? When we had our Four Freedoms March at the beginning of 2017. You've been with us from the beginning of your tenure as a U.S. Senator. And you even care about this issue that people have long neglected us in the Berkshires when it comes to Massachusetts news in the Berkshires. And you have done it in such a way that shows what the most important thing we can do in government is work as a team. Now, nobody here is surprised that Tricia Farley-Bouvier uses the word team, because I use it at every speech I make. Okay, but this is a fine example of private citizens, local government officials, state officials, and federal officials working together to bring solutions to what is a real problem, an everyday problem to consumers in the Berkshires. The mayor mentioned the angry meetings that we have had in the Berkshires. It is frustrating to hear story after story of individuals, and I will tell you, it is chiefly the elderly who are being impacted by this. Increasing costs, outrageous costs that they are paying as consumers for basic information about their own state. Charter-Spetcurm cares much more about CEO salaries and shareholder revenue than they care about consumers. And that is not right. As a consumer champion, Senator, you have taken this by the horns and saying no more Charter-Spetcurm. You are going to provide the people of Pittsfield and Berkshire County with a basic right of local and state information. Senator, we have statewide races going on right now in the Commonwealth. And the people of the Berkshires can't even find out what's going on in these campaigns. But we know what's going on in campaigns in New York State. We don't get to vote for them. So again, I thank you. I thank you for the leadership that you and your team have taken on this. I thank you for your friendship. I thank you for your taking the lead for the consumers, the people of Pittsfield and Berkshire County. Okay.
Thank you.
Mayor Bernard, would you
Mayor
like
Tom
to?
Bernard, welcome.
Thank you, Senator. I'm going to echo what the mayor and the representative said, beginning by thanking Senator Markey and Congressman Neal for joining us in this fight against Charter-Spetcurm and their practices. And I'm going to note right at the beginning why this is important, because I'm looking straight at the camera from Channel 22 in Springfield. I've got the mic from Channel 22 in Springfield in front of me. The words that we're saying and the information that's being presented won't be seen by the people in the Berkshires because Channel 22 in Springfield isn't carried in our cable systems. So it is about civic engagement. It is about the statewide races. It is about news and information that is relevant to the residents of the Berkshires who are citizens of Massachusetts, but it's the residents of the Berkshires who aren't being served by news that is important to them, the stories that are affecting their lives. So that's why this is important. And Senator, thank you for championing that, for helping to take that fight to us. And the other word that you used, and I think you see it on display right here, is the word partnership. This is a partnership at the state level, at the federal level, at the municipal level. My first conversation with Charter-Spetcurm, I sat in my office with Representative Barrett. We had community meetings and representatives from the delegations were there, members of the North Adams City Council. Mayor Tyer and I have sat with the Department of Telecom and Cable, and we're speaking with one voice on this issue. And the issue of market modification is important because it shows a crack in Charter-Spetcurm's facade. It's one part. It's the lack of service. It's the increased costs. It's the lack of responsiveness to our local access corporations. I know Sean's going to speak in a while, but I want to acknowledge Dave Fabiano from Northern Berkshire Community Television, who's here. And I hear his stories and his frustration every day about the fact that we have a deferred maintenance problem in our systems, and Charter-Spetcurm doesn't address things until they've broken. There is no proactive investment. And why does that happen? It comes down to one simple thing in the marketplace: lack of competition. We're served by one company, and they have a disincentive to provide a high level of service, an appropriate level of service, a service that is respectful and cost-effective for our residents, our citizens, our seniors, those on low and fixed incomes. So this is a step in a larger issue, but it's a critical step. And again, Senator, I want to thank you, and I want to thank the partners that we stand together with to fight this fight every day. Thanks a lot.
Great. Representative Pickett.
Thank you very much, Senator. Welcome back to the
Thank
Berkshires.
you.
Good to have you here. The mayor said it perfectly. Channel 22 is here. Nobody in my district is going to see it. It's a problem we have. The problems that we have with Charter-Spetcurm are very in-depth, very broad, but I want to really address the senator's legislation, because I think that's really why we're here today, and I think this is a critical piece. Representative Barrett and I probably have the longest history dealing with multiple cable companies over the last 25 or 30 years, and the excuse that they've always used is the DMAs, those designated market areas, as the excuse why we can't cover Channel 22. We can't cover Channel 5 out of Boston. We couldn't cover, when I was a young selectman in Lennox, Channel 3, WFSB out of Hartford, Connecticut. The excuse was always the DMAs. We've been fighting this battle for a long time. Be careful what you say about the home runs at Fenway Park when you talk to the Berkshires, because there's a lot of people like to see home runs in the Bronx as well. And that's why preserving the designated market area of Albany is critically important. But what you're doing with this piece of legislation, allowing, I almost call it grandfathering, those stations that have been there since I was a young boy are critically important. We don't need to change the DMA. We just need to make sure that Channel 22, WCVB out of Boston are preserved on our local Berkshire channels. And I think that's the critical piece that we're fighting for today. I think legislation can get very complex. This piece of legislation is very simple. It's straightforward, it's bold, and it can be effective. And I don't believe anybody in the Congress should have an issue with it if they really take a hard look at it. The DMAs are a problem not just for the Berkshires. They're problems for other parts of the Commonwealth, as parts of other parts of the country. So protecting the DMAs is good in your legislation. Giving that grandfathering clause, I think, is a critical piece, and that's a home run for us. So I thank you very much. When we're talking home runs, this is a home run piece of legislation. Congratulations.
Thank you. Appreciate that. And Representative John Barrett.
Well, Senator, I think I'm the only one up here who's probably been fighting them almost as long as you have. And my battle with them began in actually September of 1983, when they were fighting for a increase in rates in the city of North Adams, and I was just about to enter the mayor's office at that time. But what this argument is about, and it really began with really came to fruition in this whole fight, was starting back in the fall of last year when they brought in the encryption boxes. They brought in these encryption boxes and started in South County. That all of a sudden raised the awareness of what was going on here. It's intolerable to think that their stock in the last year has increased from $190 a share to $312 a share. That's what it's increased, and yet they're dropping stations, dropping their costs, and increasing the cost to the consumers. And the bigger issue here is that we have to involve the MBI, that the state of Massachusetts is spending over $50 million in making it competitive out here, not only bringing the last mile, but they also have to be part of our solution in bringing effective competition to the Berkshires in this area and making it cost effective. Something has to be done there. But most of all, we need this type of not only cable TV, but also the internet service that goes along with it. Because our young people know it's all about streaming these days. And while they control both markets, not only the cable industry, but also our broadband service, it's something that has to be addressed. If we're going to grow this economy in Berkshire County, we need a competitive system of broadband service, and we need investment by the private sector. And as long as they remain a monopoly out here, we're not going to see that, and it's going to hold our economy back. So I am so pleased, because it was a lonely battle for a while, to be very honest with you, in fighting this cable company and bringing it to light. But the people of this community, and when I talk community, I'm talking the Berkshire community, they should be proud of what they've been able to accomplish over the past 8 to 9 months in bringing this issue to the forefront where it belongs. And I just hope that our local media will start focusing in, not just in Berkshire County, but throughout Western Massachusetts, as what an important issue this is. And it's not just about TV, it's about that broadband service. But I can say this much, feels so good to be here today when they talk about partnerships. I don't know if we want to call it a partnership, but I want to call it a coalition that's going to be able to get things done. And Senator Markey, I'm glad that you're stepping up to the plate, because you probably know more about it than anybody else in the United States Senate, about broadband as well as about the cable industry. It's your opportunity to really shine in the sun once again, because you know what? They're not sending us out to pasture just yet. And this will be our last hurrah, even though it's going to last longer than people think. But it's an opportunity for all of us, all right, to join in this effort and make sure that we pay attention to, not only to Patriots football, but also making sure that when the two gubernatorial candidates are in a debate, that we can see it out here in Berkshire County, which we don't even have the ability to do now. We don't even get the public access TV out here, I don't believe, so that we can see some of those debates. So, Senator, keep up the good work, and may Richard Deal be at your side.
Oh yeah, Richie and I are partner on this. Our goal is to bring a victory to the Berkshires. Next, we're going to hear from AJ Enchill, who is in Senator Adam Hines' office. And again, Senator Hines has been fantastic, just absolutely fantastic. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you to Senator Markey, Mayor Tyrer, and Bernard, and the Berkshire State Representatives for welcoming me on behalf of State Senator Adam Hines, whose schedule unfortunately does not allow him to join us here today. My name is AJ Enchill. I'm Senator Hines' District Aide for Berkshire County, and he asked me to read a short statement on this important topic. Thank you, Senator Markey, for being in Pittsfield this morning and for taking strong, proactive measures on this issue. I'm sorry I cannot be here with you all in person because this is a critical issue for the region. This is an issue that impacts all of our constituents, and this is an issue that we have all come together to work on, given its significance. This is, at base, an issue of civic engagement. For example, the residents of Berkshire County could not watch one of the debates for the 1st Congressional District prior to the recent primary election because it was aired on WWLP Channel 22 out of Springfield. And that channel is no longer available in Berkshire County. Now, as we move towards Election Day this November, voters must decide how to vote on important ballot questions in the contested gubernatorial and U.S. Senate election. Without television access to in-state news and programming, Berkshire County residents will have to work harder in order to be knowledgeable about the candidates and these questions that will directly impact them. There has been an ongoing effort amongst all of us here today to rectify this issue, but we are continuously reminded of the federal regulations that govern cable companies and broadcasting stations. That is why Senator Markey's work has been critical for moving this down the field. We look forward to helping in any way we can. We have also taken a multi-pronged approach on the state and local levels. Here in the Berkshires, the anger of residents is clear. Most recently, it was demonstrated by the online petition we circulated, signed by more than 1,000 people, demanding action by Charter to restore these channels. This petition has been submitted to Charter, the FCC, the State Attorney General's Office, and the State Department of Telecommunications and Cable. Work by others, including local municipalities, continues, and the Attorney General's Office has been collecting testimonials and complaints about service issues from local residents. I truly appreciate the team effort to do what is right for our residents. The engagement by Senator Markey is essential, and it is a game changer. It is critical that we keep our attention focused on this matter of fair practices, to keep our region connected to Boston and to the rest of the state to which we belong. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Reese. And finally, we're going to hear from Sean Serry from Pittsfield TV.
I do quite as much public speaking as the folks that are around me here, so I've got a little something prepared. But thank you for the opportunity to speak today. Thank you, Senator Markey. Thank you to our legislative delegation for addressing this important issue, including State Rep. Farley Bouvier, State Rep. Mark, State Rep. Pignatelli is here, and State Rep. John Barrett, of course, and our Linda Tyrer, our mayor, and Mayor Bernard from North Adams, and of course our Pittsfield City Council. You heard people talk about team today, and you know this has to be a team effort. It's absolutely been a team effort, and every one of them has played an important role, and Senator Hines as well, if I didn't say that. Localism in broadcasting means serving the need for information by and about the area that we live in. And this is what we do every day in community television, the business that I'm in. The original aim of the FCC with regard to broadcasters was to keep this ideal intact. And there were even rules about ownership that prevented large corporations from owning too many broadcast stations. Over the years, this ideal has slid downward into protecting corporate interests, especially the cable companies, who have grown larger with every merger. This is shown in the disregard for the orphan areas like the Berkshires, where simply being geographically distant from the seat of our state government becomes a real disadvantage. Electronic media has the promise to bridge those gaps and to bring people together and not divide them further. But the actions of companies like Spectrum show blatant disregard for their customers in areas like ours. We just aren't important enough to them to care, apparently. And that's why this legislation that Senator Markey and Congressman Neal are proposing is so important to areas like ours. It will provide the best path to providing all the news, weather, sports, entertainment, and other critical information that we need in an area as unique as the Berkshires are. We also need to stay vigilant on other threats to local channels, such as the recently introduced FCC proposed rulings on what is called the in-kind offset of local franchise fees, which threatens to wipe out the funding for channels like PCTV. This also limits the ability for local cities and towns to get compensated for the use of their rights of way by these large distant corporations. But again, thanks to Senator Markey for listening to our concerns and for caring about the whole state, including Western Massachusetts.
Thank you so much. Thank you for being here. Questions?
Maybe I'll start.
Yes, sir.
We've had this issue with Time Warner before we had Spectrum. So, do you have anything that you can do to make a long-term fix so that we're not fighting the same battle in another 5 years?
Well, again, the goal which Congressman Neal and I have is to bring Charter to the table. This is a piece of legislation intended to send that signal to them, that we want to establish a relationship with Charter and the Berkshires that ensures that they have access, yes, to Albany, but also to Boston and Springfield, that they shouldn't have to choose. And so that is what our objective is. It's to ensure that ultimately we resolve this question in a way in which the Berkshires have predictable access to Albany, Springfield, and Boston channels that give them the information they need for their families. That is our goal. Yes,
Senator, the language that you previewed suggested that it's a measure to compel Charter to engage in good faith negotiations.
Right.
That starts a process, but that's not a sure thing. Why can't the legislation just ask for the restoration of service as of 2016? And then secondly, is it fair to ask a private company to pay for duplicate channels, which is not required of other companies serving market areas?
I think it's fair to ask a cable company to serve the area that has customers paying very large amounts of money in order to have access to their service. That's my goal. I'm on the Telecommunications Committee. As Representative Barrett mentioned, I'm the author of a high percentage of all the telecommunications laws in our country. Localism is at the heart of those issues, along with competition. But in the absence of competition, there has to be regulation. There has to be a voluntary agreement which is reached between the cable company and the local area. That's what we're seeking to accomplish. We can negotiate it in a way that minimizes the impact on Charter, but we're not going to compromise on ensuring that access to the Boston and Springfield market information is in fact provided out here in the Berkshires.
So can I follow up on that?
Yeah, sure.
There were negotiations before. Do you feel that they were not done in good faith and that's why you had to take this step? And what do you see as the likely time frame for actually bringing service back?
I would say our earlier negotiations were not fruitful. And so that's why Congressman Neal and I and Senator Warren are upping the ante. The Berkshires, in their nexus to New York, are not unique. This is
all across the country. My goal is to now find other allies in other areas of the country that have a very similar situation, where they may be on the border of one state and yet the broadcast comes in from the other state. So this isn't just something that happens in 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 states. This happens quite frequently. So our goal here is actually to escalate through the introduction of this legislation, the effort in order to get a resolution. It can come through the passage of the legislation, but it can also come through a negotiation.
Can I follow up on that? This is where the negotiations did take place. When Time Warner was purchased by Charter-Spetcurm, they made a promise every public hearing they went to that they would uphold all the services that Time Warner had negotiated with communities. They failed to honor that commitment. That's on the public record.
And is there a time frame, Senator, where you'd hope to see that this would lead to service restored? The channels?
Well, again, Congressman Neal and I are going to be meeting with Charter next week. So we're going to continue to intensify this negotiation, but now it will be in the wake of our introduction of legislation in the House and Senate. Richie is poised to become a leader of the Ways and Means Committee. That committee is very important. And I'm on the Telecommunications Committee in the Senate. That committee is also very important to the industry. So we're going to command their attention in a heightened way after the introduction of this legislation. But we're not going away until we get an answer that satisfies the people in the Berkshires. Yes, sir.
Will the legislation address how local channels have moved up to the 1300s for channels like PCTV in the Berkshires?
We don't have that specifically included in the legislation, but all issues are going to be on the table as we're moving forward. We want to make sure that the Berkshires aren't just an afterthought to a multinational corporation, that they understand the real concerns of this community, and that they try to deal with them in a way in which Representative Barrett said was represented as what their goal was going to be when they were successful in taking over the franchise. Question?
What is your resistance to changing the DMAs?
The DMA does not have to be changed in order to accommodate the Berkshires. The Berkshires do abut New York. That's a reality. But they also are a state. They're a part of a state that it focuses on things in Massachusetts from a political perspective in many ways, from a sports perspective as well. And so I think that we can potentially square this circle, that as long as Charter is open-minded and they're willing to give carriage to the stations that are here in Massachusetts, then it gives someone in the Berkshires the option of which news channel, which sports programming they want to watch. That had been the historic option which people had. It's now been taken away from them. Our goal is to restore them that right of choice, which I think they deserve. So the DMA doesn't have to change. Charter has to change and go back to what had been the way in which the relationship between the Berkshires and all of this information, news, sports, and weather had been presented to them. Yes, ma'am?
Yeah, you talked about legislation and you talked about negotiation. Do you see the legislation as leverage for your negotiations? And if you're successful in negotiations, will you drop the legislation?
I think that everyone up here would in fact be willing to drop the legislation if we receive what we wanted for the Berkshires. But we're not going to stop until we get what we want. We're not going to stop until Charter does negotiate in good faith to give the people of the Berkshires what they need and deserve, paying a lot of money every month in order to have Charter come into their home. This is a way for the consumer, for the families of the Berkshires to speak to Charter. This legislation is saying, please give us what we need We are not New York, we are Massachusetts. We appreciate what you do, but it's not enough. And we want it to be restored. Okay, so we will could pursue legislation while simultaneously negotiating with them, with Charter, and that's what Congressman Neal and I are going to be doing next week with Senator Warren.
So
Yes, sir.
do you think that the companies that provide this content should also negotiate and perhaps be willing to take less money? Because again, we're asking Charter to pay twice for similar content.
I think the stations are very flexible. I think there's a lot of open-mindedness amongst the stations. We just need to have open-mindedness from Charter if we're going to resolve this issue. I think ultimately the revenue stream is not as important. I almost believe to Charter that the principle that they don't have to carry. But that's not ultimately how this is going to be resolved. It's going to be a recognition of the public interest responsibility which a cable company has, and ultimately this revenue stream issue is something which, in my opinion, is completely negotiable, and in talking to the stations, they're completely open-minded about what their compensation would be.
And Larry, their stock went up from $190 a share to $312.
Do you own any, Representative
No, I'm
Barrett?
sorry that I don't. I understand North Adams must own some shares. But that's the thing too. People are out there and they've seen their bills go up by 40% over the last year. Through these continual increases that have been put, charging for encryption boxes, which are questionable. And the big elephant in the room too that we haven't talked about is the FCC. And I think that once hopefully the senator and the congressman will be in a position, they can deal with the FCC where they will become pro-consumer rather than pro-business, because they're the ones that have made some decisions really that have cost the consumers out there a lot of money. So companies like Charter get to run roughshod, and that's what they've done over the past few years of this. We have a strong advocate with the senator and the congressman, and first time in a while, I feel as though something might get done here.
I'd like to just follow up on this question that Larry had about compelling a private business. This private business, this faraway corporation, is in the realm of working with consumers in essentially a public utility. That means that you have to deal with government. That means you have to deal with consumer champions like the senator. That means you don't get to take advantage of our elderly neighbors who just want to have basic information. So it's not saying McDonald's versus Burger King here. There is no competition. This is basically a public utility, and consumers deserve protection. Charter-Spectrum has no interest in protecting consumers, and that's why you need your representatives in government to go after these.
Question? Yes, sir.
Recently in New York State, our Public Service Commission rescinded Charter's ability to operate because they weren't living up to their promises. And they were seeking out other cable companies to come in to take over. Although Charter's been granted, I guess, an extension. They gave them 60 days, and now it's not sure how much longer. Do you foresee that happening in Massachusetts?
Again, there's a coalition that's been put together here. It represents a fair request of a monopoly to serve a legitimate public interest goal of the community. And I hope that Charter understands that we are going to be insistent and persistent to ensure that there is a response to this issue. We are not going to be willing to accept that because there's a DMA that sprawls over 2 states that they don't have a responsibility to the state that's the smaller part of that DMA. It's just not going to be acceptable. So what's happening in New York could be replicated here in
Massachusetts. Cable companies just have to understand that they're not going to go unregulated as they enhance their monopoly status, as they become more and more powerful in their ability to extract monopoly rents from consumers across our country. And this is a perfect example of where a very reasonable request is being made by a community to ensure that there is a proper coverage of the area with information which that community needs, which otherwise it would never be able to have access to. And thus far they've said no, but we are not going away. And I think what you're talking about in New York is just an example of something that's actually happening across the country, where local communities are now starting to take a look at cable companies and having them.
Yeah, just one quick, I don't mean to interrupt you, Senator, is that the FCC has determined that Berkshire County, most of Berkshire County has effective competition based on the fact of how many dishes, satellite dishes, are in a community. They call that effective competition. And that really is absurd. And that was against the wishes of the Department of Telecommunications and Cable from the state of Massachusetts, who says that's unfair and it's wrong. Yet they've determined we have effective competition here in Berkshire County. And it's just crazy. We do.
And I am the author of the law. It's a 1992 law, which created the 18-inch satellite dish. So it didn't exist before my law in 1992. But I would have never intended for it to result in the Berkshires not having access as Comcast, as Charter consumers to broadcast stations that they had historically had access to. That's just absolutely wrong. So that's the battle that we're going to engage in. And as you can see, there's an incredibly knowledgeable group of local leaders who are part of this. And that's where Congressman Neal and I are now going to actually escalate down in Washington, so we have a partnership to accomplish that. Thank you so much.
So, yeah, one last thing. You mentioned satellite dishes just then, right?
Yes.
Well, what about people who get DirecTV or Dish TV? Their programming is defined by the market area as well. How would this help them get Massachusetts programming if you're a satellite TV customer in the Berkshires?
That's a good question, and again, we're about to go and meet here, all the leaders who are here, and I want to hear what their concerns may be about that as well, because that is also something that I can engage in.
If I may
Sure,
add
no,
something,
please,
Senator,
no,
please.
please.
As we send you off,
Yes.
all of us standing behind you to negotiate with Charter, to have these important conversations, to persuade them to give us back what we deserve. There's one point that I would like to advocate for on behalf of the citizens of Pittsfield and the Berkshires, that one non-negotiable item on in this conversation is there will be no more added costs to the subscribers if we are given back our Commonwealth channels. There should be no additional cost put upon the citizens of our communities to have the access to this important Commonwealth of Massachusetts news and programming. So that's one very important component that I would like to send you off with. No additional costs put upon our citizens.
And again, the broadcasters are saying that they're very flexible on what they would be compensated with. They see their channels as public interest delivery mechanisms for all this information, and so we're ready to go. And today we start our engines, and Congressman Neal and I are now in the process of beginning an effort to get a new resolution.